Violence in film is an interesting topic. It's something many gravitate towards, whether that be for the practical effects, the sheer absurdity, or just something to satiate our sick friggin' minds. But what if instead of watching generic slasher villains slaughtering a group of random people for mindless entertainment, you were instead watching a more realistic showcase of violence, involving a completely innocent family? Would it still truly be entertaining to you? And to make it worse, what if you were a direct accomplice to it all? Enter Funny Games, a film released in 1997 by Michael Haneke. It follows the Schober family as they fall victim to a home invasion. That is literally all the information I can give you. If you haven't seen Funny Games, go do yourself a disfavor and watch it. I should point out that there are two versions of the film, the original and a direct shot-for-shot English remake of the film. They're practically the same movie, so it doesn't matter which one you watch. However, I recommend the original film, as I feel that having the actors be completely unknown instead of established really helps the legitimacy. Why is that something you should care about? I mean, you're already watching Funny Games, so why not make it as miserable as possible? Don't be scared of some subtitles. With that being said, let's begin our look into Funny Games, the movie where you are the monster. And of course, you should already understand this by now. Spoilers ahead. Funny Games begins with the Schober family driving to their lake home, presumably for vacation. The family consists of Father George, Mother Anna, and son Georgie, along with a dog named Rolfie. While they begin settling down, they are soon visited by strange men named Paul and Peter. Wait, why does he look like Sneeko? The two men simply ask for a few eggs, resulting in a chain of events that allow them to swiftly execute their plan, subduing the father as they hold the family captive, their dog seemingly gone amidst the chaos. Alright, so what we have currently is your typical home invasion setup. The unsuspecting victims, the perpetrators of unknown origin, and an established setting where we'll be spending most of our time. And then we get to the 30-minute mark. Oh man, I really hope they didn't do anything to the dog. Yo, what the fuck?! Paul effectively breaks the fourth wall by acknowledging the viewer's existence. Now, you gotta keep in mind that when Funny Games released, it was advertised as another home invasion film that offered extreme violence. Nothing more, nothing less. Paul is aware of this. His winking can be interpreted as the family has no idea what they're in for, or that the viewer will be given what the trailers promise, just not in the way they imagined. With this revelation, it puts us in control. We are no longer merely spectating from the comfort of our screen. Everything from now on falls on us. This leaves us, the viewer, with a choice. Either to shut off the film and prevent further escalation of the situation, or to continue the film with our association with Paul in mind, effectively turning us into an accomplice. If you still decide to proceed, the quote-unquote funny games soon commence. Instead of the action-filled horror film the trailer promised, you are forced to watch two men subject an innocent family to sadistic acts of prolonged torture. You've received your extreme violence, but at what cost? As the film progresses, there are little moments of hope sprinkled throughout, like when Georgie is able to escape and is so close to ending one of his captors. However, the shotgun is unloaded, and he is taken back. It's scenes like these that make Funny Games so evil. You know it doesn't follow typical film format, but scenes like these really make you believe that there's truly a glimmer of hope, before it is all brutally ripped away from you. After this is when we get to the film's defining scene in my opinion. As a struggle begins to ensue, Paul casually walks to the kitchen and makes himself a sandwich, seemingly disconnected from reality despite the gravitas between everyone. Now, in a traditional Hollywood movie, the struggle would be shown in dramatic effect, with music blaring and copious amounts of straight cuts, but the viewer isn't shown anything. I read this scene as a metaphor regarding the desensitization of violence. Those who consume violent media become so desensitized that to them, it is merely a casual occurrence. This also aligns with Paul, who periodically will glance over at the situation as if it were normal, even when the ill-fated gunshot goes off. The first cut since the start of the scene displaying a TV soaked in blood, a car race being shown on the TV, further symbolizing how those who view violence merely see it as entertainment. Something I should note is that when Peter shoots Georgie, Paul scolds him, as Georgie's death doesn't fall in line with the traditional horror films that viewers came to see, and by killing off the child character, it lowers the stakes. The two men then abruptly leaving right after. We are then subjected to 30 minutes of pure agony. We force ourselves to watch a family grieve and attempt to move on after the worst moment of their life. This being a result of our own hunger for violence in film. And unfortunately, these 30 minutes are a deliberate strategy of Paul and Peter, as their goal is to make Funny Games a feature-length film, in what I read as a sadistic way to satisfy the viewers by implementing stakes back into the film after the death of Georgie. With their return, a new set of Funny Games commence, but for the first time in this movie, something different happens. It is a cathartic moment, not just for Anna, but for us the viewer. It is a scene that most will audibly cheer for. However, life isn't fair. The act of violence isn't fair. George is then killed unceremoniously before the two men take Anna and drown her. The film ends on a freeze frame of Paul looking at the viewer with a smirk on his face after visiting another unfortunate victim, doomed to repeat the cycle of violence. We allowed this all to happen. From beginning to end, we are constantly baited into finishing Funny Games, desperately hoping for some sort of turnaround, but this instead indirectly prolongs the suffering of the family, and in the end, it was all for nothing. So, why did Michael Haneke make this? To answer this question, we must gain some understanding of the man. Haneke hates violence in films. Now, it's obvious that Funny Games acts as a critique on violence in film. However, I believe that is a surface level interpretation of the film. I don't think that Haneke necessarily dislikes violence in film, but instead, how violence is portrayed. Violence in film can be fundamental if depicted tastefully. However, a lot of horror films, or just, films in general, feature either meaningless or comedic acts of violence. Haneke, in response to Marvin's death in Pulp Fiction, states, "I was upset because I think it's irresponsible. I can't stand violence. I'm allergic to any form of physical violence. It makes me sick." So with this in mind, Funny Games strategically mismarkets itself. I mean, it literally features a jazzcore song to hype you up, helping to lure in consumers of that content. And while the film itself punishes you for viewing it, I believe that the film, and Haneke himself, seek to make you question yourself as a person. Let's circle back to one of my first statements.
Instead of watching generic slasher villains slaughtering a group of random people for mindless entertainment,
why do we cheer for the generic slasher villain? When looking at violence, especially in horror films, most of these people don't deserve it. So how are we able to sympathize with the Schober family, but not a group of teens mercilessly massacred by a mass killer? And yeah, the obvious answer is how they're portrayed and the tone of the film. There's nothing entertaining about seeing an innocent family being sadistically tortured, but seeing Mortal Kombat level kills being inflicted on random people we have no background on is pretty fun. But at the same time, a lot of these quote-unquote random people are just as innocent as the Schober family. In fact, the Schober family themselves are too just random people to us. This is why I believe that Funny Games delves into the topic of selective empathy. Violence is still violence, even if it's portrayed as comedic, and by reducing it to just humor, we slowly become desensitized to it. Now with a film like this, it begs the question, why did Haneke remake Funny Games around a decade later? I mean, it's literally just a one-to-one remake of the original, so seems kinda pointless, right? Well, during the Cannes Film Festival, Haneke was approached by Chris Cohen, who suggested the idea of remaking the film, in order to further spread Haneke's stance on violence. Funny Games is an Austrian film, which made it difficult for it to reach international audiences, something that Haneke intended. That, along with its relatively small release even in its own country, due to the subject matter of the film, made it fly under most people's radar. But those who had seen it were aware of how insane it was. So, by remaking the film one-to-one in English, with well-established actors, it helped Funny Games reach a wider audience. Even the trailer is extremely similar to the original, continuing to give viewers a false idea of the film, before subjecting them to the most miserable viewing experience of their life. I'd also like to mention how the American version is edited like the Clockwork Orange teaser, another film that delves into the concept of how society views violence as nothing more than entertainment, albeit in a much different manner. In fact, Alex and Paul share plenty of similarities, both being ultra-violent young men due to their surroundings. Alex being because of his society, and Paul presumably because he is aware that he is in a horror movie, and must adhere to traditional horror narratives, hence why he is so upset when Peter kills Georgie first, like stated before. But, long story short, Haneke wanted to introduce more people to his stance on violence, so to reach a wider audience, he made the film more accessible, remaking it in English, and featuring established Hollywood actors. And not gonna lie, I respect the commitment. I just wish people would watch more foreign films, because the original is superior. Having the cast be composed of relatively unknown actors just makes it hit so much harder, Don't get me wrong, the remake still has some incredible performances, but it just pales in comparison to the original. And that'll conclude our look into funny games. Man, what a movie. This is a film that has stuck with me since I first watched it. I hated my entire viewing experience and was begging for it to end, but it is truly one of its kind. It is one of the first movies to ever make me ponder deeply about how to express thoughts and beliefs about the human psyche through an experimental format, especially like how Michael Haneke does it. It's awful to watch, but it undeniably makes for incredible discussion. Now, the big question is, do you guys agree with Haneke's stance on violence? I personally get where he's coming from and agree with some of his talking points, but a lot of it is exaggerated in my opinion. Like, yeah, I understand how consuming splatter films can desensitize you to violence and gore, but seeing that content on film, knowing it's clearly fake, isn't even comparable to seeing actual violence and gore. Even then, sometimes all you gotta do is wind down and watch a dude killing some other dudes in absurd ways. It doesn't make you a bad person as long as you don't let it influence you. Let me know though, as I would love to read your interpretations or thoughts about it. With that being said, thank you for watching this video. The next video is going to be a lot more lighthearted, but it's still going to be a banger. I had a lot of fun making it, so I hope you'll check it out.